Interesting in plants that are growing in dirt that are irrigated with water, they don't have that water content. And I've discovered the reason is that we see in dirt, because it's compacted and hard, roots can't develop like they would like to, and so they're pretty compacted and not very spread out. But in this environment where there's so much air in the ground and it's so porous, the roots just spread everywhere. And because you have this very large root system, it's able to take up all this water. I've always said that the amount of water in the ground has nothing to do with what's going into the plant. Because you could have, heavy clay ground, which is what I have here, and I could be watering all day long, and it's not going to go in the plant because the ground's so compacted, there's no root system. But in this stuff, because the ground is so porous, I don't need to water at all because the roots are everywhere. Drawing such a wide area, they're taking up such a huge amount of water, so it doesn't matter about how much water is in the ground, it's because of their capacity to take up. And that's what's so key, and this is what I just find just such a pleasure. Anything I pick, you break it off or you bite it, and just juice and water just flows out of it, And that's how it's supposed to be. That's really the design. And it's just so important for us to be hydrated with our food and to be getting enough water. And like I say, the stuff you buy in the store, it just doesn't have that water content.
Oh, this fennel is like, I can't even describe it.
Isn't it awesome? It explodes in your mouth. It's amazing.
But everything, you see all the water in that? It's all about roots.
You got to water 2-3 times a week, depending on what the temperature is, what your soil is, and sometimes more if you have sandy soil. And Paul never waters. Never waters. It's you go out there and it just blows your mind. Just blows your mind.
You see, because the compost holds the water so well in the ground, I don't need to irrigate. And because I'm not irrigating, it just stays totally weed-free, because when the weed seed blows in on top of these dry wood chips on the top, they can't germinate. And the other nice feature is when you go to pick vegetables, it's not muddy. It's not got dirt all over. It's totally clean because I wasn't watering. And when you walk on it, it's nice and dry. There's no mud. It's just such an incredible benefit not having to irrigate continuously. And they noticed, like when we started getting some rains, all of a sudden these little weeds started popping up in places. So you see, those seeds were here all summer, but now that it's starting to rain, they're going to come up. I just take my rake and rake them out. It's not a problem. They don't have a lot of, a huge amount, and they're very easy to control. But it makes such a difference when you don't have to irrigate continuously as far as your weeding issues. Weeds? Well, I have weeds. Weeds always happen, but because the ground is so soft and nice, I can just take my rake and just drag the rake through, and it uproots all the weeds. Or if I have to pull them, they pull out really easy. And it's kind of fun pulling here because I enjoy seeing the great root systems and just how nice everything does. And it's great. I call them salad green for my chickens because they just love it. It's just good organic greens. So weeds aren't a problem. Where in other soils, when it's got compacted, you got to really work to get those roots out. This stuff, they just come right out, so it's much, much easier.
Weeds, I didn't say the weeds come up really good too. If you have weeds, it's
easy to weed.
Easy to weed,
Easy
right.
to pull the weeds in this once you have a lot of this material.
It's super easy to pull these things out. It makes your weeding a whole lot easier than what you're used to. But yeah, look at all those roots too. I'm used to things just breaking right off. It's amazing. Revolutionize weeding your garden.
Isn't that great? Look at that good old root.
So it just makes it such a difference when I used to get down and have to pull weeds, and you have to get a tool to get underneath to get the root because they break off.
The blade goes straight down next to the dandelion, and then I just simply pull back like that. No, I got pretty much all of it.
When I used to till this, it was just solid weeds. Blows my mind because it's just like this was the same space. So the same wind, the same seeds are blowing across here, but because of the cover, I don't have the issue. This is one of the reasons why organic food is so expensive, because of the incredible labor-intensive weeding operation. They have to, get down and pull all those weeds because they can't use herbicides.
This is a beet bed, and highly intensive labor to weed it, just to pick out the weeds and thin them, because there are weeds out here. It would take about 4 hours per bed. A 3-foot by 30-foot carrot or beet bed take about approximately 4 hours to weed.
I was for years in God's face trying to figure out what weeds are all about. I says, how come I have weeds here? I've done my best to get under your, how come they're here? And he came back so fast, it almost scared me. He says, they're not your weeds, they blew in for your neighbors. They're cultivating, and they're creating weeds, and the seed blew into your place. And you'll always have that as long as they do this. kind of a thing, you know. And I love that scripture how it says that all of nature groans and travails waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. You see, they know we're disconnected, and they're groaning and travailing, trying to save the earth because we're just totally disrupting it and losing it all. And I think the answer is so beautifully described there in 1 John 3, where it says, "Beloved, now we are sons of God, but it does not appear we shall be. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone who has this hope in himself purifies himself as he is pure." I think that's so key, because nature is waiting for that day when we'll be all like Jesus. We'll get reconnected with God and be taking care of the earth as he intended us to. You know, occasionally pests will come in nature and will defoliate a few trees every now and then, but not serious enough that it causes any great losses, and nature always overcomes.
I think if you follow organic principles, it's very rarely that your insect population, your negative insect population gets out of control. And of course, it doesn't matter if you spray organically, you're still going to kill beneficials, and so beneficial insects. So it's best to just deal with whatever damage you have and move on.
George Washington Carver, when people would ask him how to deal with a disease in their tree, he would say, well, you don't want to deal with a disease. You want to get the tree in good health and vigor, and it'll take out the disease. I think that's such a true statement, and it's so true about everything. And if you'll get a real healthy plant, as I have here, I don't have any insect problems. If a bug bites into my plant, he drowns because there's so much water there. He just is infused with it, and he wants cellulose and fiber, so he goes somewhere else to find a stressed, dehydrated plant to eat on, because he can't eat on mine because there's too much water. So if you have a healthy, vigorous plant, insects are not a problem. As plants became weaker because of chemical fertilizers, insects began to be very overpowering and would take out huge amounts of plants. And so they stepped up to the plate and created insecticides. What they didn't take into account was that the Creator designed everything in nature to be overcoming, and as these insecticides would come in contact with these insects, they would mutate and develop opposition to it, and the next generation, those insecticides didn't affect, and so it's not a problem. So they have to keep improving and strengthening the insecticides. Well, what that has progressed to today is that the insecticides are so powerful, so potent, they're killing the plants. And so what they've done to solve that problem is now they're using genetically modified organisms where they're changing the DNA of the plant and putting the insecticide into the plant. And I don't know if you're following this, but this is not going to end. And if you just, it amazes me how people, think these days, if something is in a plant that's going to kill insects, it certainly can't be beneficial for my body.
We have to decide if it's acceptable to take any one piece of the puzzle out and it'll work. Like GMO crops, that's my perfect analogy for that. You can't take a DNA strand and start pulling pieces out and putting in different chromosomes and expect for that to achieve just one thing. Oh, it's just going to make it resistant to Roundup. Well, guess what? When you do that, it changed something on the other side. It's like a bubble. Pressing in the bubble, it distorts somewhere else. So down the road, and so I guess what I'm going back to is we have to keep thinking of a holistic approach on any of this. You can't just take one piece out and think it's going to be okay. And the mulching idea is just adding something back.
Several years ago, I read an article that really got my attention. In Japan, the typical consumer would go to the store, the produce market, and pay 30 to 50% more for vegetables with bug bites. And their rationale was that this food is safe to eat. The stuff without bug bites is so poisonous the bug wouldn't eat it. And they're right. This is what's so pathetic about our culture. We're so cosmically oriented. If we see a little bug bite, a little wilt, oh, don't touch that. That's not good. We want this really pretty, good-looking stuff. But we don't realize that those things are all part of nature. They happen, and you can cut around it or you can get rid of it. But, to be so put off by a bug bite and then to create food that's so poisonous that the bugs won't eat, and then you eat it, is not very smart, not very good for our health.
My name is Edith, and I think living here in Sequim now for 22 years. This is the most beautiful place so far because you have always that fresh air. Sequim, and then the mild winter. Of course, the mild winter is also bringing along all the little pests that bother us, but Paul has found through the mulching, you have much less problems with the insects.
Well, the thing about pesticides is that, whenever you use a pesticide, whether it's organic or inorganic, you're killing good insects as well as bad. For instance, when you have aphids, ladybugs come in right after to control them. And so my feeling is I don't want to kill them, I don't want to kill bees, and so I'll just live with the pests, for that period of time, and it's not a problem. Crop rotation. If you look at nature, plants go to seed and the seeds fall on the ground, and they do it every year, decade after decade, century after century, and there's not a problem. But when you cultivate and you have exposed ground, you've got to move crops around because you'll have disease issues and problems. I think I've got the classic example down here at my pond area, where it's a nice, good, low, wet spot. I've been growing potatoes now 16 years in a row in the same place, and they come out nice and clean every year. Today we're going to harvest some potatoes, and that's one of my favorite fun things to do because it's such a pleasant, surface to be on. The potatoes come out so clean and nice, and it's just fun, And as I'm harvesting, I'll also plant, and my harvesting and planting is all done at the same time, and it makes it so simple and easy. This is wood shavings and horse manure mixed together, and it's just, guys, let's just look down in here as you dig. Just how beautiful it gets. It's just, this is, if any farmer or gardener would recognize it, this is like ultimate gold. This is the most beautiful stuff you could ever have. Look at just how soft with my hands I can move it. And it's just never compacts. It's totally just the best. See, now this was last year's seed. See how it's hauled all inside. See how much different that looks than that. That was a seed I planted last year. And if you know anything about growing potatoes, if you grow potatoes in dirt, if you don't rotate them, after several years they'll get scabby, and that scab will increase to where you can't even use a potato. They just get so bad. But my potatoes down at the pond, the girls were here harvesting, they're all clean and beautiful, no scab. And I love it. It just makes it so convenient. pH issues. I have over here in my herb garden, I've got blueberries, which everyone knows is a very acid-loving plant. But right next to it, I can grow Swiss chard or cucumbers or anything else that's alkaline, and it does well too. So here I see again all those things that we work so hard to correct: soil preparation, fertilization, irrigation, weed control, pest issues, crop rotation, pH issues. In nature, it's just all beautifully done by itself, and so I just enjoy having the convenience, and it just makes it so much easier. Well, the reason people don't grow their own food, because if it's done traditionally, it's just a lot of hard work. I mean, you become a slave. I always tell people, when you do a garden, if you don't stay on top of it, it turns to weeds and you lose it. It's something that requires all your undivided attention, so it's very labor intensive. And people don't have the time or the energy or the desire to be so tied into something, because it's just such a big... Where this is just so opposite. It makes it so simple. This is why I so want to get this out, because in the past it's been so hard and so counterproductive and negative, where this is just so awesome.
We're in Southern California, in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, in a town called Palos Verdes. Southern California only gets about 13 inches a year, even in a normal rainfall year, and we've had drought for the last 4 or 5 years.
And what we've tried to do is find interesting California native plants and plant them around the garden as much as possible, and then more recently vegetables, and see how they do in this area. We've basically taken the existing soil, which is pretty dry, a mixture of adobe and clay and little rock, and added mulch as much as we can to make it richer. Certainly we hope that plants will grow more healthily and more readily with less water, and so that's kind of an experiment. This is actually soil that we've worked a little bit, but has lots of hard particles and doesn't work very well for plant roots. So definitely getting it more moist and adding some compost on a regular basis is important.
In Southern California, it doesn't get terrifically cold in the winter, but it can get quite hot in the summer, and it's definitely a way to hold in the humidity and to keep the soil from drying out so much during the hot months.
Well, just recently we learned about a source of covering through the Los Angeles Sanitation Department. They are taking the green recycled clippings and yard waste and those kinds of things, and grinding it up and making it